What's going on, everybody? My name is Josh Mason. This is my BMW E92 that I compete with at Hot Pit Auto Fest. We're here this weekend, August 19th. This is round 4. I'm super excited. We got one more basically battle royale, I guess you can say, for round 5. So round 4, I'm really gonna, have to put the heat down as far as like stay up in the points and do well. And then it's one more chance. But while you're here, why don't we go ahead and take a walk around, and I'll give you a little bit of a breakdown of my BMW E92.
Oh yeah. What did this start life as?
It started as a 335, so it's non-M3, but it was a 335, no engine, no trans. I got it for $2,000. It was a little bit high, but this car was immaculate. Like, there wasn't a scratch on it, wasn't a dent on it. Like, it was complete. All the interior was in it. Like I said, just minus engine and trans. So, but I was able to take a lot of the interior out and get some of the money back.
Who did you purchase it from? You said it was pretty clean when you got it?
Yeah, it was actually really clean. It was still a clean title. But I actually found it on Facebook Marketplace, believe it or not.
No way.
Yeah, but I was looking everywhere, Opera, Facebook Marketplace, like Craigslist is kind of a thing of the past, but yeah, it was Facebook Marketplace, and I got it from a gentleman out in Ojai. So it was a little bit of a drive for me.
Yeah, I was curious, like, if you purchased it as like a rolling chassis, or you like bought it like completely bone stock.
Yeah.
Like, I always wondered that, because this thing is like pretty much at like a pro level. Like,
yeah. It was bone stock. Like, I mean, all stock suspension, stock wheels and tires, all the interior, just no engine, no trans. So technically it was a roller, but it was a OEM roller.
Okay. Oh yeah. Where do you want to start, in the engine bay or?
Sure. Yeah. Why not? Here.
Okay.
Pop the hood.
What kind of material is this hood?
This hood, believe it or not, is the factory hood. Oh, no so way. All I did was just cut a hole in it, for the air filter to fit in. But just to give you a little gist of what's going on here, it's a LQ4 6-liter iron block. So technically it's an LS, but it's not really an LS because this is an iron block that goes in truck motors. So you can find this block in like a 2500 HD. Started life as a 6-liter. I stroked it out, so now it's a 403 cubic inch. Dart heads, Edelbrock manifold with an AccuFab throttle body. I do have a nitrous plate set up for it, even though we're not spraying nitrous just yet. I wanted to run out the rest of the season completely NA. Have a KRC power steering pump, along with a Setrab oil cooler specifically for the KRC power steering. A lot of people ask me what this little device is right here. That is an AGM bypass valve. So when the power steering pump is setting a lot of pressure over to the rack, and if the rack kind of sees too much pressure, this will actually bypass that pressure and shoot it back into the tank. So it just helps not to blow out the rack and just keep the power steering system alive, because drifting is so demanding on power steering systems. I have eliminated the water pump up front, so this is completely something I kind of came up with to make this work, especially with this engine plate. This engine plate here is out of 1-inch aluminum 6061 that I CAD designed myself, and I CNC machined myself as well.
Wow. How long did that take to make in CAD?
Oh, this I would say maybe I probably have a good solid 2 weeks in developing this. And then even just the machining alone, it took me literally 10 hours to machine, because I don't have like a fancy Haas machine. Believe it or not, I machined this on a like a Chinese CNC router that I have. It was a challenge, but I was able to do it. It just took me a lot longer, and lots of WD-40 and really, really good bits. Yeah, I was able to make that happen.
It looks beautiful.
Thank you.
So did you make that design from scratch, or did you have like a template or something?
It was completely from scratch. What I had to do is, I have a mock-up motor that, when I say mock-up, it's kind of like a plastic block that's 1-to-1 scale of a real motor. I'll place that in the car. I'll kind of get it, situated and straight where it needs to be. And then I could have either 3D scanned it and then kind of brought that scan into the computer and then built it into here, or I just decided I'll just manually measure it, because I only had, I didn't have a whole lot of time to build the car. So I literally was doing it as fast as I can. So I just manually measured everything and designed it in the computer, and then had a machine.
Are you pretty familiar with, it's not called CAD, the program, right?
No, I use SolidWorks. So CAD is just an abbreviation for computer-aided design.
Okay. Are you pretty familiar with SolidWorks?
Yes.
Okay.
I've actually been using SolidWorks for, roughly, I'd say 10 years now.
Wow.
I mean, I'm no expert, but it's just 10 years of experience. I still, even after 10 years of experience with SolidWorks, I still learn something new every single time I use it.
That stuff really interests me, like SolidWorks and all that computer, like CAD design, all that stuff.
Oh, yeah.
It's really cool stuff. Like you can make like pretty much whatever you want.
Oh yeah, well it starts with a CAD model, and then even when it comes down to 3D printing, you know, you model something and then you export it as an STL, put it in your 3D printer, and next thing you know, you got a this or you got a that or whatever. There's a couple of components on the car I'll show you later that are actually 3D printed. The motor is also a dry sump, so we got a daily dry sump set up in here. Those of you that aren't familiar with a dry sump, it's basically where the oil is being pumped into the motor and it's also being scavenged outside of the motor. When I say scavenged, it's being pulled out of the motor into a separate tank, which I'll show you guys later in the back here. So this is a daily dry sump system specifically for the LS. Really keeps this motor alive, especially when you're seeing, you know, 6,000, 7,000 plus RPMs. You can see some of the suspension that I have here. This is a Wisefab angle kit alongside of Feel coilover in the front. These are just one ways. And then as you can see, I've relocated my ignition coils to this area and that area on that side, because typically on the LS motor, you know, your ignition coils are up on the valve covers. But because this is a solid roller motor, I have to constantly adjust the valve lash because it can sometimes come loose because we're spinning it so high. So you just want to make that accessible, which is why I relocated these here.
How often are you adjusting the valve lash?
I would say, you know, after, you know, I try to check it after every single event. And then if not, if there's some downtime, you know, if nothing's, you know, if we got time, you know, I won't be afraid to pull a valve cover off and just double check it. It's always kind of preventative maintenance, you know, even though it's, you can't really be too meticulous when it comes down to maintenance and keeping a motor like this, you know, alive.
What does this rev out to?
This right now, I have the limiter set at 7,500.
75?
I could probably buzz it up to 8, maybe even 85, but the way the bank account's set up and I don't have a bunch of backup motors, we try to keep it reliable as much as possible.
Once you hit that rev limiter, it's just like bouncing off like
it'll hit, it will just...
Okay. Hell yeah. You said this was a LKQ?
It was a LQ4.
LQ4?
Yeah, it's a LQ4 block, yeah.
Okay, nice.
So which is basically, it would be your iron block version of a LS2. The LS2 is an aluminum block, but the LS2 is a 6-liter. LQ4 is also a 6-liter.
Okay.
So, and then the difference between, when it comes down to weight, I've weighed a bare aluminum block, and I've also weighed this bare iron block. And when I say bare, there's nothing in it. It's just a block alone, no crank in it. It's got the main caps bolted in it. It was about a 112-pound difference from iron to aluminum.
Wow. So
yeah.
the iron was 112 pounds.
Yeah, it's like the aluminum block, I think, was like 109 pounds, and then the iron block was like 220 something. Yeah, it's roughly just a little over 100 pounds difference.
Yeah, that's a lot of weight considering like how much everyone's trying to shave off like these cars.
And it's like people argue, or I wouldn't say argue, well, there's a certain argument, well, you know, you want to run an aluminum block because it takes, you know, a bunch of weight off. But the downside about aluminum is it can move, believe it or not. The tolerances are so tight, we're talking, you know, hairs, right? Thousands of inches, that when you really abuse an aluminum block, things start to tweak and twist. With an iron block, you can just send this thing all day, every day. You can kind of, not that you want to, but it can slightly overheat and it will still live to fight another day.
Okay. And what kind of ECU are you running with this?
I'm running a Haltech system.
Haltech?
Yeah, so it's a Haltech ECU, even including the wiring harness that you see here is all Haltech ECU.
Okay. Like all the sensors, the wiring harness, it's all Haltech?
Yep, everything's all Haltech, yeah.
Nice. Do you like their system, or like?
I really, really do. I've had literally, thank God, 0 issues with it. And then my tuner that tunes the motor actually works at Haltech. So especially when you have a tuner that knows how to tune a motor and then knows all the software of Haltech, when you make those two together, you really get, you know, some really great results and some really great reliability out of the system.
It's like bread and butter. Pretty
much. But although I'm not saying you need someone from Haltech to tune, but it definitely makes it more reliable. Or no, I shouldn't say more reliable, but it's nice to have someone that's that knowledgeable.
And did you guys choose this intake right here, or what kind of intake is this?
This actually, it's under it is a AccuFab, I forget what model it was, but basically, I'll show you really quick what it looks like with the filter off. This is actually like what they call is like a sprint car style air filter system. But the throttle body, it's basically like a carburetor. It's still a 4-barrel, but the only difference is there's no fuel going through this. It's just still going through the fuel rails because it's, you know, EFI, but it's still a 4-barrel. So, and the theory behind it is when you have small ports like this, if you had a big open port, you're not really creating a lot of velocity for that, you know, air to get into the motor. With this, you're kind of squeezing the air and then you're ramping it up, shooting it down into the motor, and you kind of want to create that effect, especially when you're naturally aspirated like this motor.
What did you say this was called, this design of the intake?
This intake was it's an Edelbrock single plane with a AccuFab. They just call these a throttle body. I'm not really sure exactly if there's a certain style. I want to say that they call these single plane, and that's going to the manifold.
I've never heard of that AccuFab. Like, I've seen that style, like with that filter and like the carburetor style, but I've never heard of that AccuFab.
Yeah. And then I even had to fabricate this mount for it, so that was completely custom. They didn't make you know, anything on the market that housed this filter onto that throttle body. So
what are the benefits to this compared to like other intake manifolds?
I wouldn't say. I think with this you can still keep your throttle response. You might lose a little bit in torque. These are more, this whole system is more for, say, like high RPM horsepower, versus you see like these big tunnel rams with a big single throttle body. That's geared more for torque. So it kind of depends on what you want to do, and also kind of how you want to drive the car. Me, I like to have that really fast throttle response. So the throttle response on this is absolutely insanely good. And if I needed more torque down low or more power, that's where the nitrous comes in.
Okay. And you already got it all set up?
Yeah, I have it set up, although it's not hooked up just yet. I was going to have it, you know, in the car for this season, but I didn't want to be rushing nitrous. Yeah. That wouldn't be something to risk.
I mean, you're killing it out there. Like, this thing's a smoke machine.
Oh, even with the power that this, I mean, it produces 608 to the rear wheels.
Okay.
And that's without nitrous. That's just purely on race gas.
I thought it was more. You said 608 horsepower?
608 to the rear wheels, yeah. It probably makes more to the crank, but 608 to the rear wheels.
Is it torque? How much torque does it make?
I think when we had it on the dyno, I think we were like, it's pretty low. It's not a square setup. I think we were like at 530 or 540 around there. It was like, it's like low 500 on torque.
Yeah, that's a lot of power.
Yeah. So, but if I was to change, say, like the manifold, I'd probably build up a little bit of torque. I'd probably maybe lose like a little bit of the horsepower and square it up a little bit, but that's kind of where that manifold comes into play. You'll see low torque numbers with a high horsepower.
Nice. And what kind of transmission are you running?
This is it's a G-Force GSR dog box 4-speed.
Okay. So that's the H pattern, right?
The H pattern, yeah. Okay. And then this transmission, believe it or not, came from Hendrix Motorsports. So it was out of like some pro level like NASCAR or whatever back in the day. But they sold a lot of the teams sold a lot of their transmissions. They sold them to more like sportsmen. I mean, I don't follow NASCAR. I don't follow the series, but I think they sold to like a more sportsmanish NASCAR team, and then they used it, and then they got tired of it, and then I ended up getting a hold of it. It still has the Hendrix Motorsports stamp on it too.
Hell yeah. Is it? Did you rebuild it, or did you just like throw it in there?
Yeah, I had to rebuild it. Yeah, I had to. I mean, I did like a rebuild, and I did like a full re-gear too. So their gears were a lot different from drifting.
Oh yeah. What kind of body kit is this?
This body kit I purchased from Extreme Dimensions. I kind of made my own kind of modifications to it. I cut the lower lip off the front bumper. I also cut the kit, portion that comes here. I took that off. Same thing with here. I also cut the lower portion that comes off here and kind of added these vents here. Same thing with, there's a piece that came down here that I cut off. So it's an existing kit, but I made a couple of my own personal changes to make it look this way. The kit itself is just literally, the over fenders on the rears, over fenders on the front bumper, and basically like the duckbill style spoiler in the back. And then as you can see, the side exit exhaust that I custom made as well for it.
Yeah, that thing.
I actually had to channel the bottom section of the car even to get this to work. If you come around here, watch, come on this side. And then as I open the door here, you can see there's the tunnel where the exhaust runs through.
Oh wow. Damn. How'd you make that?
Just on a sheet metal brake. Had some sheet metal laid around and kind of cut it to size, made a couple of paper templates, fit the paper templates up there beforehand just to get the right size of the sheet metal, and then just broke it up and welded it in there. I've done everything on this car except for paint the car. I've done all the fab work, even the wiring, except the only thing I haven't done on the wiring is that board up there. My buddy Derek Klug built that panel while he was working at SpaceX. He was wiring up some of the rockets that were going up to space and stuff, so he's a very talented wiring guy. You can see there's the Haltech ECU. And then these lines that you see here, all these gold lines, 2 of them are for coolant for the rear mount radiator, and 3 of them are for the engine oil system. The reason why I leave a lot of this wiring exposed is because if we need to like diagnose anything, we need to switch anything, it's very accessible. Sure, it doesn't look as pretty, but when we only have 5 minutes to fix things, you really want things out in your face to where you can fix them very quickly.
Yeah.
And then you can see through the window here, that aluminum tank right there is the oil tank. Right there, battery, fuel cell. And then you can see here, rear mount radiator. With these ducts, this was the Eurofighter style kind of rear window that I actually replicated myself. I could have bought it from HDK, but on a budget a little bit, so I fabricated a lot of things, so I knew I could make this myself. So everything on this I fabricated myself. It's a combination of the polycarbonate window and aluminum that you see here. I haven't really cut up much of the car. These are still kind of factory quarter panels here, just from the over fenders. This is a factory 335 bumper that I cut to change a little bit. This is also the factory trunk. I just, cut a hole in there just to get the air out of the radiator out, all that hot air and stuff like that. But the trickiest thing that a lot of people like to see in this car is my rear bash bar setup. As you can see, they're on coilovers here, and how it pivots is off of here. Coilover sits here, so when you raise a wall, it kind of soaks it up.
No way.
And I can change spring rates if I wanted to. I can also change compression and rebound. Basically make this kind of adjustable of like how hard you want to hit the wall or how much you want to spring off the wall. But ideally, you don't want to put yourself into a situation where you're hitting, a wall that hard. But it really helps, kind of suck into the wall like a cushion.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, the only similar design I've seen to this was like, it's not a complete bash bar. It's like they have 2 pieces on each corner, so like one side collapses. But I've never seen it with like struts or like attached to it.
Yeah,
it's pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, this is not FD legal, but I didn't build the car for FD. I built it for Hot Pit, and I built it for the former Clutch Kickers. Clutch Kickers, they're still around, but they're not having events. But I built it to do events like that. I didn't really want to do, FD. So I just wanted to build a car the way I wanted to build it and just do something wild. And then on the rear, it's got 2-way coilovers, so you can see the reservoirs here. Those brackets right there, I designed and 3D printed. They're on each side. And then if you look under the car here, you can see the rear suspension's all wise fabbed up with the sway bar. The differential that you see there is a Ford 9-inch diff. I know a lot of people run quick changes, but I'm really a firm believer of Ford 9-inch. It's a really bulletproof diff. I mean, they handle an ungodly amount of horsepower in drag racing. It is a little bit more difficult to make a gear change, but if I do need to make a gear change, I make it in the transmission.
What do those Ford 9-inches come out of?
They came out of, I think they came out of trucks. They came out of also, I think Mustangs back in the day. The Ford 9-inch was such a great rear end because it's how many the ring and pinion, how many gears are actually touching. So typically on a diff, you maybe have 2 gears engaged, maybe 2 1/4, but on a Ford 9-inch, you almost have 3 gears already engaged that make it really, really strong and bulletproof. And then they're so modular. They're you can change the spline count. They can range from 28 spline, 31 spline, 33, and I think even 35. They might even go higher, but don't quote me on that. So you can really, what kind of racing you want to do, whether it be road racing, okay, you don't need a 31 spline. You can get away with a 28, and you can do a lightened ring and pinion and all this stuff. But with drifting, since we're shock loading it so much, we want, say, a minimum 31 spline. and you know, like stronger, beefier ring and pinion gears that I have in this, and I've had zero issues. The axles that are in the car were custom made, 930 CV inner and outers with 300M 31 spline axles. Here's another little thing right here. So, you know, obviously this is where we put the fuel, but I also have a fuel gauge here because originally when my crew guys, when the motor's fired up and we're in the hot pit and there's noise everywhere, you know, everyone's kind of like, you know, hey, where's the fuel at? And I got my helmet on and you can't hear. So when you're filling it up, my crew guy can just like look at this and go, okay, it's full. Usually that panel there is bolted on, but you can kind of see where the fuel cell is. I custom made that fuel cell. That is a 7-gallon fuel cell. With fuel in it, probably holds about like 6.5 gallons, maybe like 6.2. I do have a Holley hydromat in there, which eliminates the need to run a surge tank. Also, I have a bunch of custom baffles in there too to keep the fuel from sloshing. So I don't have any foam in there, but I have a bunch of baffles in there. So here's the office. So Halo seat, Momo Halo seat, fire suppression system tank down here, Haltech dash, and yeah, this is it.
Do you like that seating position, like this far seated back, or is it because the dash is removed it looks like that?
I actually, so what I did was I positioned the seat where I wanted it as far back as I could, and then I scooted everything back. So these are not OEM pedals. This is a Tilton pedal box and then an aftermarket steering column. To the rules of FD, that is illegal. They want you to run a factory column in factory pedals. Well, since it's not an FD car, I ran it this way. But I wanted to scoot myself as far back as possible to help shift weight to the rear wheels. But then again, I don't weigh very much, so I don't know if that really was a big help. But you know, I try to I don't know why, I just like that. I prefer that driver position.
I noticed too, like the fuel cell and the battery is like ahead of the axles. Was that like did you guys plan on doing that for like weight distribution?
Yeah.
Or like...
Yeah. So originally, when the Eurofighter was built, they put the fuel cell in the back, and they put a lot of weight kind of like on the back to really get that 50-50 weight distribution. And then I watched a video with James Dean in his E92 Eurofighter, and he was going over all the different changes that he wanted to do by like actually scooting weight forward. And I kind of took a mixture of the real Eurofighter and James Dean's advice, and I kind of mated them in the two, because he moved his dry sump tank up into the front, and his is right-hand drive, so he moved his dry sump tank up here, along with a couple of other different things, to really put that weight forward. And I was like, well, I'll see what it's like in between. And even on my previous build in my S14, I put a lot of weight in this kind of compartment area, and it felt really good. So I kind of wanted to use that same philosophy, and the car feels phenomenal the way it is. And even when it comes down to putting it on the scales, we actually have a very, very, very close, even with all where it's at, it's very close to 50-50.
What would you say the benefits are to having the weight move forward as far as like handling or?
I think everybody has their own definition of how they think it's going to handle or what their experience is. But from my experience personally, if the weight's in the back, it's harder to throw the car out. And then once it does throw out, it's going to want to it's going to want to snap back faster. If you have weight in the front, you're kind of now the car is rotating in a different position, and I believe it's when you throw the car, it's more predictable, versus in the back with a bunch of weight, it's kind of like you're playing catch up. So you throw the car, and then you're kind of feeling what the car is going to do, and then you have to correct. Versus this way, you can throw the car and it plants, and you're like, okay, cool, I can. And if I do have to correct, it's probably driver error and not car error.
Have you driven a car at this level with like more weight towards the rear?
Yes, like my Mustang was like that. I had an S197 Mustang. I put the fuel cell in the back, radiators typically in the back, put the batteries in the back, and it definitely, you felt it. Like I could feel the difference, and I wasn't a big fan. In both those cars, the Mustang and the E92 are 108-inch wheelbase, so you could really apples to apples on that. And then when I really experimented with shifting the weight where it's at now, I really like it. Now, again, I think it's just driver preference. This is all, I just did it because of experience. But biggest thing to take away from that is just experiment. Don't be afraid to like experiment. If you got to shift some weight just to try this, try that. Not a lot of people experiment. So experiment and just see what you like. And I found what I like.
Oh yeah. You said the S197 Mustang has the same wheelbase as this?
Yeah, 108.
Wow. Just like right on the dot? Like
right. Well, it's probably not right on the. It's. I think like the E92 is like 108.7, and I think like the Mustang is like 108.9 or 108.6. I don't know. Whoever's watching, you guys can Google it.
But it feels pretty similar.
Oh, it's It's like you're not gonna. This is not F1. You're not gonna feel a 1/4 inch wheelbase. I don't care, even if it's James Dean. I don't care what driver you are. You're not gonna feel it. Like maybe in an F1 car, but not in drifting. Okay. But if it's like, but you can definitely feel 100 inch to like 108. Like just from my experience after driving my S14, like I can feel a massive difference between 108 and 100. So
would you say you really like this chassis as far as?
Like, I love it. I love the E92. I love 108 inch wheelbase. I learned how to drift in my 68 Camaro that was 108. And then from there, I had my Mustang. My Mustang was 108. After my Mustang, I got my S14, which was 100, but it felt weird to me and I never got used to it. And then sold that car as a roller, took the engine and trans and the diff out, put into this car, and now I'm back to 108. And I believe I'm really, really comfortable in this car. And it's a McPherson strut front, multi-link rear. It's fully adjustable in the back. Car is super fast. I kind of spend more time trying to take grip out of the car than put it into the car versus my S14. I was constantly trying to like put more grip, more grip, more grip. It needs more grip, it needs more grip. This thing, it's like, it's too grippy. We need to take the grip out.
more power.
Yeah, now it's either take grip out or add nitrous, so.
That's gonna be nuts when you add nitrous.
Yeah.
It's gonna be nuts.
It's gonna be a party.
Hell yeah. Yeah. Did you design this cage too, or?
I did, yeah. So I've been a fabricator. I've been welding since I was 13 years old, and then I became a professional fabricator when I was 18. I got my first job, and I've always built cages. I mean, I've built probably like 400 or 500 cages in my 32 years of living. Majority of them have been UTV cages for the UTV industry, but a lot of them were actually car cages. So putting a cage in a car is a lot different than putting, a cage on a UTV, obviously, because now you have all this existing body panels that kind of dictate where your tubes are going to land. So yeah, this was 100% my design. I try to get the cage as tight as I possibly can. Typically, you don't have to, for this series, you don't have to run these FIA bars here, but I believe it, for one is safety, and then for two, it helps kind of stiffen up a little bit of the chassis, because that's the other thing. You want to kill two birds with one stone putting a roll cage in the car. You want to make it safe, but you also want to stiffen up the chassis, because especially in an S chassis, because an S chassis, it's tin can sheet metal, and if you lift up just a shell, you and your buddy, you can lift it up and you can almost twist it. So you really have to plan where you want to land these tubes, and you really have to foresee where you're going to go before you start putting tubes in it. And you really got to calculate where the frame rails are, and where maybe this portion of the chassis is weak. I got to put a tube there. So it's when it comes down to cars, every car is kind of different. Whether it be like road racing or drifting, this is, I would say, is more like a drift spec cage. If I was to build a road racing cage, it would be a lot different, but this would be my drift spec cage for the E92.
Oh yeah, man, there's a lot to talk about with this car. There's so much I'm like trying to keep up. There's a lot going on.
There's a lot. And then I also have like work lights here, these LED lights kind of strung out throughout the cage. So like at night, if we need to work on something in here, I just flip a switch on and it completely lights this entire cabin up.
Yeah, those lights are bright. I saw you at ABS at night, and that thing was like lit up the whole interior.
Oh yeah. Yeah, so no, because then you're chasing around a flashlight. Oh guys, bro, where's the flashlight? Oh, just use your phone. It's like, nah, we got a switch right here.
Yeah.
So that helps a bunch.
Hell yeah. Oh wow. Is that pretty much it?
We got a little over 10 minutes, so you got to suit.
Yeah, we got to hit the driver's meeting, but yeah, dude, like that's pretty much the car in a gist.
Oh yeah, dude. Thank you a lot, man. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you, Danny. Yeah.
I'm gonna try and get some footage of you driving.
Heck yeah.
Get some nice slow-mo shots.
Heck yeah.
Hell yeah.
Dope.
Thanks,
all right, brother. Thanks again.